for coming to our panel today, Breaking Barriers, Women Investing in Women. This is actually a new panel for us, so we're super excited about this conversation. We want to thank our sponsors, our founding partner Walmart, our presenting partner Coca-Cola, and the sponsor of our main stage panels, Mars Wrigley. I also have the pleasure to introduce Jacqueline House, who is our moderator today. She is host of Good Day NWA, and she will be introducing our panelists.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. It's so good to see everybody. Are you excited for another year of Bentonville Film Festival? Right. We have a dynamic panel today of change makers and innovators, and so I'm happy to introduce these ladies today in no particular order. And ladies, I'm just going to go in the order I have on my sheet right here. First, we have Ita Ikputum, who is the partner at Gingerbread Capital. Next up, Dr. Lisa Dyson, PhD, Air Protein founder and CEO. Award-winning actor Alicia Reiner, you may recognize her as Fig from all 7 seasons of Orange is the New Black, and Agent Sadie Deaver and Miss Marvel, to name a few. Next, we have Catherine Gable, Chief of HR North America, Coca-Cola. Dee Dee Wright Ford, entrepreneur, business development executive, brand specialist, and founder of Purpose Toys. And finally, we have Carla Pita Lord, did I say that right? Executive Vice President, Enterprise, Inclusion, and Social Responsibility, Banijay Americas. Please give a round of applause to our panel. Okay. I've got 2 mics. It's for you or someone? Okay. Does somebody know? Perfect. Here we go. Okay, so I recommend that you all check out our panelists' bios. A very impressive mix of entrepreneurs and industry leaders are with us today. So we will have some time for Q&A at the end, so make sure you keep those questions handy. Who's my person to keep me on time? V? Okay. Let me know if we go over, because I expect that we're going to have a great conversation today. Isa, because you're sitting right here next to me, seeing that more women are moving to become entrepreneurs like yourself, can you share your experience and give more perspective on that particular topic?
Absolutely. It's so wonderful to see a packed house here to support women investing in women and see a diverse set of a room, like representing what we believe is out there. So when we think about women entrepreneurship, the stats are bleak, but the good thing is, like, there's more women starting businesses today in America than any other category. But on the flip side of that, only when we look at the venture capital industry, only a little bit, it slipped, 2% of female-founded teams are getting funded in the venture capital space. So there's a big disconnect there, but like women are, it's not for a lack of pipeline, it's not for a lack of innovation and talent. It's the capital sits in the hands of most firms, tend to be all male or have 10% women in the partnership. And so that moving of capital from the hands of those who have the capital into those that are creating innovation is what we at Gingerbread Capital are trying to close. So our firm, we back female founders and gender diverse teams. And if there's not a woman as part of the team, we're not really interested. So that is part of our way of trying to close that gap.
Sure. What are some other ways you think that gap can be closed as well, Ita?
Well, your wallet. Everybody sitting in this room has the opportunity to close that gap. When you think about the products you're buying, when you think about the services you're buying, you could ask yourself, like, who made this? Where is this being made? And think about the teams that are being built. Because we know that, I think there was a stat that it's going to take about 100 years for it to get to parity in corporate America. That's part of the reason why you're seeing a lot of women leave and start their own companies. Because when you're building at the beginning, you can build the way you envision it at the start, and it's much easier to maintain that as you grow if that's the culture from inception. So think about the teams you're joining, where you're spending your dollars, and everybody in this room, can be a part of making that change.
Yeah, absolutely. Carla, you are also an entrepreneur. Can you share some of your early beginnings in the industry with us?
I love that, but I'm not an entrepreneur. I think that question's perfect for Dee Dee, who is an entrepreneur.
Yes, either one. Yes.
Sure, I'm not only an entrepreneur, I'm also an introvert, and this is my first public speaking engagement.
You're going to do great.
We got you. This is a supportive space. This is a very supportive space. So we are here for you.
Thank you so much. My story and journey as an entrepreneur is a bit unique. I've had every opportunity afforded to me that one could ask for through, firstly, my grandparents and parents. As a creative person, I'm a creative person first and foremost. I was given every resource in the world to pursue ideas, dreams, concepts, ideations, right? Through that journey and through that just unthinkable level of support, I was able to sort of connect the dots and understand that in entrepreneurship, aside from having drive, it's really important to have an incredible support system, but also an incredible network. So what we've done through Purpose Toys, aside from bringing these little dolls to market, we have Naturalistas, which are the world's first natural hair fashion dolls sold at major retail, as well as Latinistas, which are the world's first all-Latina line of fashion dolls. Launched those yesterday. Speaking to the idea of sharing resources, we also brought to market a brand called HBCU Dolls, which is a line of dolls that honors historically Black colleges and universities, also a first. Thank you so much. The founder of that is a woman called Brooke Hart-Jones. And speaking of investing in women, when I had an opportunity to bring several lines to market, with Walmart honestly being our first and most important partner, we were able to share those resources with HBCU Dolls and with Brooke Hart-Jones, and together we built out two incredible respective businesses.
As more and more women are getting into that entrepreneurial space, what is something that you would say to just kind of help women take that leap? Do you find that that's really the first step is taking that leap to just even start whatever company it is that you want to start?
Yeah, I think taking the leap, before you can take the leap, you have to identify what it is that absolutely drives you. Entrepreneurship isn't necessarily the easiest thing in the world, and if you are engaging in something that doesn't inspire you, you might also be a little bit discouraged and may give up on things, right? So before taking the leap, just make sure that whatever it is that you seek to spend your time on and seek to develop, that it's something that really drives you, because there will be bumps in the road, and that drive will push you along the way.
Absolutely. Lisa, for you, you're our other entrepreneur on the panel. I'm sorry. Apologize for that, Carla.
I love entrepreneurs. Now I feel like I should be one.
I think you definitely could be. You definitely could be. Let's talk about how you were able to take the idea of Air Protein and launch that.
Okay, wonderful. Well, it's so wonderful being here. It's just amazing to be in this group, in this environment. One of the things that got me on this path is my father. So I grew up in a house with an entrepreneur. At some point, he was president of a chain of hair salons, and then he started his own. And just seeing him have all these ideas and have them come to fruition or not, the highs and lows of entrepreneurship, but he kind of was the master of his destiny, and he would gather all these people. He'd have a vision and inspire people to get behind him and work together, and it was just amazing to observe. And so that was a part of my past. But in terms of how I got to Air Protein, my passion is trying to have an impact on climate change. I went to one of the many people who went to New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina hit to kind of help rebuild the city, and that affected me in a number of ways, and I was involved in a number of aspects of that. But later in life, as a scientist, my degree is actually in physics. As a scientist, I looked at the fact that climate scientists have been telling us that these weather events are going to get more intense and more frequent, and just seeing the impact on everyday people's lives of these huge weather events, I just wanted to be a part of the solution. So ultimately, I also worked in the business world, and our idea was that if we take carbon dioxide and turn it into products of value, and we do it in an economically attractive way, then industry could scale it. And so that was kind of the beginning of my journey on creating climate technologies with my first company. And then ultimately, if you look at the food system itself emits more greenhouse gases than the entire transportation sector. So it has a huge impact on our environment, and it leads to massive deforestation. Rainforests, species extinct, all kinds of things are happening. And so if we can figure out a way to revolutionize the food system, make food that's nutritious, that people love, they don't even have to think about it, they just pick it up, it's cost competitive, then that's where I want to be a part of that. And that's what ultimately led me to start, and my co-founder to start Air Protein.
And P.S., if you really want to hear the backstory, watch her TED Talk. It's got like over 1 million views. It's very cool. Very cool.
Who are some of the women change makers in your field in physics that inspired you?
There's not a lot of women in physics. The women change makers. So there's Lisa Rand. There's a lot of. So I did theoretical physics, high energy theoretical physics. There's a lot of people, Shirley Jackson, people I can definitely look to. But it was men that got me here, that invested in me, who I am, and they said, this is someone who has a bright future, and focused on helping to get me there in terms of my physics career. But then ultimately, I transitioned to something broader.
You see a lot of focus on getting younger girls active in STEM. What are your thoughts there on maybe the earliest age you feel like to get that exposure into that field of work?
Yeah, girls usually are, good at math and all that at a young age, and at some point, the number of girls in classes just starts dropping, and that's unfortunate. And it's really critical for girls to see role models, to see that they can be there. It's really important to really, when they start dropping off those younger ages, just intervention at that point, and making things exciting, and talking about things in a way that's exciting. How understanding science and math really helps you understand the world, helps you be a problem solver, and you can go make protein from air at some day. If you get into science, there's so many things you can do with it. So that's really critical and important.
Yeah, absolutely. For you, Alicia, I imagine being an actor, there have been a lot of women who have impacted your career, and we're here talking about women investing in women. Can you share maybe a story about a woman who's really impacted your career?
Sure. I'll start actually by saying what's really cool is Ita's partner at Gingerbread is a woman named Linnea Roberts, and my first movie that I produced and starred in was called Equity, and it played here, and it played at Sundance. We premiered at Sundance and sold to Sony Picture Classics and made our investors 115% back within a year. It was a female-driven story. It was the first ever Wall Street movie about women and made by women. Female director, female writer, female producers, female lead. The women made as much, if not more, than the men on the movie. And Linnea put her money where her mouth was and invested in us. As a former woman on Wall Street, she invested in the movie. And she also recommended other women invest in the movie. And that's really what we're all here to talk about. And when we talk about entrepreneurship, producing films is entrepreneurship. It is a lot of hustle. It is a lot of outside of the box thinking. It's purpose driven. You have to fall madly in love with what you're doing, and there are so many no's and there are so many fires you're putting out every single day, and you have to really have a deep purpose. And I will share, in reference to your question, too, a woman who really influenced me was at Sundance. Effie Brown gave a speech at a women's luncheon, and she said, if you want to change the world, there are 3 ways to do it. Hire, mentor, invest. And it's really a lot of what Ita was talking about, but I like that 3 things, and it keeps it in your brain at all times. Hire, whenever you're hiring, hire the woman. Hire the person who doesn't look like you, who didn't go to school with you, who it isn't familiar. I think part of our problem in this moment, and I say this as a white, cisgendered, very privileged human is we're so comfortable hiring the person who looks like us and sounds like us and feels like us, and no change will happen unless we stop doing that. So hire is a piece of it, mentor is a piece of it. I have a movie in the festival right now that I act in, and I got a producer credit on it really because I just shared with the team everything that I learned producing my 2 movies. But there's a lot of that, and a lot of times we don't share our secrets. It's like, well, I worked really hard for that information, so I'm not going to share it. And I don't play that way. We gotta share. If anything on this planet in this moment, we have to learn to share better. And then invest is, again, what Ito was talking about. When we talk about investing, it's not just giving a check to something. It's investing your time. It's when you're shopping, really thinking, what am I buying and how am I investing my money in what I'm buying? And I will say, I fully interwebs, stalked Lisa. I read an article about her in a scientific journal 7 years ago and reached out to her cold email. I'm this actress person, but I am obsessed with what you're doing and I'd like to meet and I'd love to talk to you. And I'm now an advisor on her company and I invested in it.
I'm so lucky.
Look at these connections already happening before you even got here today. I love that. I talked to Jean Shim today. She is the director of A Great Divide, which is also premiering here at Bentonville Film Festival. And she said it was really important for her to have people of Asian descent in front of the camera, but also in back of the camera as well. And for you as a woman producer, when you're working on those projects and it's all female led, is there some pushback that you get maybe because of having an all-woman team?
So when you're producing independent films, you don't have to worry about that. That's why you do it outside of the system, right? So I'm the boss, so I get to choose. Yeah, I'm hiring all women, and on my second movie, we even had more women. We had more female crew, and it was I think 70% female crew. And what I will share about that is sometimes, as I said, producing can feel really hard. And one of my favorite stories is a couple months after we shot Egg, my second movie, one of our PAs sent me a letter and she said, I just went through a movie and it was so hard and there was so much harassment by men and it made me want to quit. And she said, but then I remembered what it was like being on your set. And I remembered what's possible. And that is the Gina Davis mission. If you can see it, you can be it. And she said, I'm going to keep on making movies because I want to be you someday. And I want to be that person that hires more women and creates more warm, nurturing experiences. And I was like, okay, that's the best, even if this movie never comes out. We did come out and we did get great reviews, but if it hadn't, just her experience made me so joyful.
Catherine, for you in the corporate HR space, can you share an experience that will describe what we're talking about here is women investing in women?
Yeah, and I could look out of space among most of these entrepreneurs, but I would share that our Coca-Cola system is built on the back of entrepreneurs. So we're very grateful to be in places and spaces like Walmart and Sam's Club, but we're also in lots of mom and pop shops. We're in 200 countries and territories around the world. We partner with 255 different bottlers. And so we acknowledge the importance of the entrepreneurs to bring refreshment to life. And actually in 2010, kind of to piggyback, Ida, on some of your comments, in 2010, we made a public commitment to build 5 million female entrepreneurs around the world. We were acknowledging the systematic inequities that existed in the hurdles for them to engage in this market space. And we did so with the prongs exactly like you said. Some of it is mentoring and networking. Some of it is business skills. And most of it is access to financial services and assets. And so that commitment was $5 million by 2020. And I'm super pleased to share that we actually built $6 million by 2020. But it takes the specific goal. It takes a full 360 process. And it takes holding yourself to account and engaging public sector, private sector partners and the Coca-Cola Foundation to get to those results.
Yeah, absolutely. In the corporate HR sector, Catherine, what are some things that you are seeing from women leaders? How are they giving back to other women in the company?
Sure. So I think that to make progress in the representation of female leadership, it requires females supporting females, and it requires male allies. And so we have created programs along the way to create the space of championship and to create, honestly, the voice at the table where decisions are being held, where the pen is held, where the money is, where the opportunities are. This isn't a new space for Coca-Cola. Our brand aspires to refresh the world and make a difference, the whole world, even the females in the world. And one of my favorite pieces of history for the company is that in 1932, we had a female board member join, and that was one of the first females in the United States of America to join a large traded company. And so this has been a cornerstone, a part of delivering on that brand promise and vision. But it's not easy, or we would be further along from 1932 to today. Very proud to share that our board of directors is 50% female-led. Our C-suite, 50% female-led. We've shared we're 39% female-led in other senior leadership roles, up from 34% in 2020. So we know we're making progress, but it requires both the males in the room and the females in the room to champion and create the space, because to Ida's point, it's not for a lack of skill or ability. It is for a lack of space to move into, to display and show and flex that skill and ability and to deliver impact.
And I have to say, that's very unusual. And for a Fortune 100, Fortune 50 company to have those kinds of stats, go Google it yourself. That's incredibly unusual.
But I have to tell you, and this is actually a conversation we have where sometimes we have to stop and remind ourselves that we are making progress and we're doing well, because if you, Ida, were walking the halls of our company, we are not satisfied. That is not okay, and that is not good enough, and we want to hit that 2030 ambition of being 50% female-led, because we know it's so important to mirror the markets that we serve. That is what is going to bring the best experience and product to our consumers and to our customers. But thank you for acknowledging that. We are proud.
But I love what you said about the fact that, you walk our halls and we're not satisfied. That means that there's work to be done, and you're committed to that work being done. So kudos. Dee Dee, these fabulous, amazing dolls. Let's talk about the importance of inclusive toys. Before we came in here, we were talking about how passionate you are about just little girls being able to just see themselves when they're playing with their dolls.
Right. So, at Purpose Toys, is this thing on? Yes. Did I really just have it on? At Purpose Toys, our tagline is to center and celebrate communities of culture. What we sought out to do, particularly with Naturalistas and the Latinistas, is to give children who identify with these dolls an opportunity to feel like a main character. So what's a trend that's happened in the toy industry, which I understand, I'm not demonizing the trend, but there's a trend of a sort of ambiguous multiculturalism. Mm-hmm. What the toy industry has done in response to, inquiries from consumers is to provide dolls that really only represent in skin tone and sometimes, hair type, hair texture. What we've done at Purpose is we've taken it a step further. We truly, seek to center culture. What makes me an African American woman has very little to do with what I look like. it has to do with my culture. It has to do with my upbringing. It has to do with my experience. So with the Latinistas and with Naturalistas, it was incredibly important to me to dig deep in the nuance and to provide a familiarity in storytelling along with the doll that represents phenotypically what children may gravitate to and may identify with.
What was your first step in creating the dolls?
My first step, I would say, but before first step, I would say my first inspiration was my mother. So my mother was a woman who, throughout my life, never straightened her hair. And I didn't know that that was a big thing. I straightened my hair, of course, you go through it. A lot of Black women go through it. You straighten your hair sometimes for safety. You straighten your hair to fit in, to not stand out, right? It was my mother first. In terms of building out the product, my manufacturing partner, Lisa Whitaker, is in the audience, sitting next to my son. And you spoke of mentoring, right? Mentoring and investment. Lisa is my mentor in the business. She's been in the toy business for a couple of years, and she's well respected. And when I brought the idea to she and her team, they immediately understood. They just understood. And it was a sort of aha moment for she and her team, but what felt like an aha for Lisa and her team was just something that was obvious for me. So again, going back to what I said earlier, for me, it's having a network of people where when I have an ideation, when I have an idea, when I have a concept, there are people that I can call just at the drop of a dime, right? What's important to me in business, now that I've recognized that privilege, is to share it as much as I can. So with Latinistas, it's not just the launch of a doll line, it's actually the launch of Purpose Toys Latin, which is the industry's first Latino-focused toy division. And that's something I'm incredibly proud of. It's run by a very good friend of mine, but also an incredible talent by the name of Giovanna Rosado, who comes from Mattel and Haba Toys. And with myself and Jovi, she used to be called Jovi publicly, but with myself and Jovi, we came up with something I think the community might like a little bit and children might enjoy. So we're incredibly proud.
Congratulations. I know you're very excited. Carla, I did not forget about you. Tell us about your role at Bentonville Americas, and then also, two-part question. Tell us about a defined moment, like a turning point in your career.
That's interesting. First, I really want to look at these dolls.
Yes.
So I saw Dee Dee outside, and I saw her with her bag of toys, and I'm like, I want to see them all. Show me all the Latinas, right? And these feel so authentic to my lived experience in the 2 seconds, even their names, Lola, Liv, Juliana, and Danny. My daughter's name is Viviana and Estella. I feel like they could be the sidekicks and the friends. And I think that what you're doing right now in terms of, there's a cultural moment in which many toy lines, as you said, have this unspecific person of color like this, and you're ethnically ambiguous and really and you might actually be ambiguous in a lot of ways, and that becomes really interesting to people, and people are like, see, well, that doll is now more inclusive. But the reality is, it's the specificity of our culture, it's the specificity of our difference, it's the specificity of our experiences that creates the real texture of culture. And I do believe that Latinas and Black women and women more generally are at the center of culture. So I'm really proud to have seen these dolls and to meet you and to be with these amazing women that you feel it, right, on this panel that we're making a difference. So I'm at Bentonville Americas. I'm the head of enterprise inclusion and social responsibility. Bentonville is a very large production company. We make all the television that you love or love to hate, depending on your perspective, from Lego Masters and MasterChef to The Real Housewives to Below Deck to Born This Way. important this way. I mean, again, 90% of our content is unscripted, and we recognize that there is a financial bottom line and a cultural bottom line to all the work we do. The work in representation is really important because we know that television and film, it doesn't just reflect us, it creates us. And that creative power of television and film to really make and shift culture, to drive social change, to start conversations, and to center new and different stories, is so important. And I was brought to that role. I was at the Television Academy for many years as the Chief Advancement Officer there, and I was brought to that story by a man, Chris Abrego, a Latino, who's probably the most high-ranking Latino executive in entertainment, period. And I was brought to that role because he saw the power and potential in me. So just that, it takes women, it takes men too. And as the men that we work with, love, live with, partner with, fight with, etc., their ability to amplify our voice in meetings, their ability to recognize our talent and to elevate it is really what started to drive the movement of women forward, and we just can't let them stop, because in the long run, power doesn't cede itself, it doesn't give itself up, it doesn't throw in the towel and say, okay, well, you can all have a seat at the table now. You actually have to take it. So I like the idea of working hand in hand with each other and with men, but also recognizing that we consistently need to take power in every room and every space we're in. In terms of a defining moment, so I'll share what I shared last night. I shared it with Alicia. I was at the Television Academy, and I worked with Madeline DiNono, who is the CEO of the Gina Davis Institute, and she was on our board. And Madeline and I had worked together on and off for a bit, but never closely. And one day she got to know me, and she was the first woman who wasn't directly my boss, was a friend, an advisor, a partner, who looked at me and said, Carla, you are a powerhouse, and you are meant for more than this. And because I believed in her so much, I believed her. Right? Because she's a powerhouse, I believed her. So I always think about that in terms of the power of our words, the power to give someone a compliment, the power to see their potential, and then to elevate it and to create opportunity for them can be not only life-changing, but world-changing little by little. So Madeline then one day called me up and said, hey, I want to pick your brain about some Gina Davis stuff. I'm like, I'm ready. So I'm at my new job. We're not working together anymore. And she invited me to join her board. And I told her, I've been on other boards before. I've been on other nonprofit boards. But to be asked by someone who was a board member and an advisor and a partner to me to then be a board member and an advisor and a partner to her, that was a real moment of clarity about what I could do in the world as well. So.
What made you want to be in the industry of media? Also love Housewives, and not sure if this is one of yours or not, but I just got sucked into Vanderpump. So it's social media's fault, but I'm totally into it.
So Vanderpump is not one of ours currently, but the new Vanderpump starring Lisa Vanderpump, it's
at the Villa.
That is Buna Murray Productions, and that's one of our companies. So that is ours. So I can't wait to be invited over to our villa any day now.
Did you choose media as an industry? Is it something that you've always done, or did you just so happen to maybe fall into it and you kept going?
So I really think that my career has been in many different places, but the defining quality is that I want to be at the center of culture transformation, right? So very early on, I worked in advocacy in media, getting more people of color jobs, specifically in broadcast journalism, and helping create internships, scholarships associated with that as well. I went into education from that because I am really fortunate to have been the recipient of many, many people's generosity through scholarships, and it is what opened the doors of opportunity up for me because I grew up undocumented and poor in Florida. And if it wasn't for scholarships, I wouldn't have the education that I have. So I did that, and then I went, and it was specifically in fundraising, like creating scholarships, creating that next generation. And then when I came back into the industry, it was again the desire to be right at the center of culture change. I really believe in the idea that whatever we do in this world, especially if we are either people from underrepresented backgrounds, women, or we love them and we believe in a more just world, our number one job is to be an infiltrator in every room. We advance our careers, we make the moves that we need to but the reason is so that when we're sitting at that table, we can hire and promote women, we can hire and promote people of color, and we can beat the drum for inclusion. So for me, media is sort of the perfect space for me to really grab and make culture change. But it was a circuitous path, but every job had that connection to culture.
Absolutely. You shared a little bit of your origin story, which is great because it's a great segue to my next question, because I believe that it's interesting to find out kind of where we all started from to get to where we're going to. It's an important piece of the story. So starting with you, Ita, if you would just share your origin story.
Well, it's interesting. It has roots in Arkansas because my mom went to the University of Arkansas, and I haven't been back into Arkansas in over at least 10 years, and my mom has passed away. But I'm supposed to be Idek Pudum MD because as a Nigerian, we're doctors, lawyers, engineers, and I went to college. I was the last one. Nobody had gone to med school, and I was pre-med. I got to Orgo, and I was like, this is not happening. I still watch Grey's Anatomy, so I feel like, I got that in the end anyways. But when I decided it wasn't going to, I thought, what did I love? What was it that I got excited about? And that was psychology. So I did my major in social psychology with a minor in finance, and I was like, what does a person that did their senior thesis on interpersonal rejection do? I went to Wall Street. So I went to investment banking, I was a trader, and you developed a very thick skin in a place where you get told no a lot. You have to prove yourself a lot. But from the standpoint of, I made some of my closest friends, built a very strong network who are still, Linnea is a former Goldman partner. We didn't know each other then, but that network comes back full circle. But, also life comes back full circle. So in the 5 years that I was there, my dad passed away, and then my mom passed away, and I got the call at work. And for me, that kind of switched of, how do you want to spend your time? What is the intention with which, if it ends tomorrow, what were you doing? How were you spending your life? And that was kind of the path that led me towards, I want to spend my time working with people, investing in people, that when I look back, I'm going to be like, I did something that, I spent my time well.
What about for you, Dr. Tyson?
Okay. So growing up, one of my role models was my cousin, who was a rocket engineer. She worked for Hughes Aircraft and a bunch of other companies like that. And I just loved, she'd come home before she worked for Hughes Aircraft, just even when she was in high school and college, and she'd come home after her engineering courses, and I just loved talking to her about what she was doing, and I loved math. And so she was a natural trajectory for me. And I ended up studying math because I knew that was a basis of engineering, which was what she was doing, as well as any of the sciences. And I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. But ultimately, I saw science come alive at the Princeton, she's a Princeton hardcore, plasma physics lab, and decided to study physics. Had many ideas, business ideas while I was studying physics, but I was on a trajectory to get to really academic trajectory and getting my PhD and all that. It was when my last year, when my dad actually passed away, and I mentioned that he was an entrepreneur, that I paused and said, I really have another interest in business. Should I think about that? Should I pursue that? And I ended up deciding to go to the Boston Consulting Group, which is a company that helps some of the largest companies in the world, their executives, solve business problems. And so that was sort of my immersion into the business world. And then if we go back to ultimately when I went to New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina, my mother's family is actually from Louisiana. So I went there a lot as a kid. I loved, food was definitely an integral part of our family, wonderful Southern home cooking, homemade ice cream, all that good stuff. And then going back to Louisiana, but with a very different reality after Hurricane Katrina hit was something that was a transformational point for me to ask, what am I doing? And what's the purpose of my efforts? And ultimately, education is one of my passions, but that's another story. But ultimately, in terms of the work that I'm doing, being a part of having a positive impact on the environment is what led me to Air Protein. And then in terms of what we actually do, the reality that right now we've cleared more land than the entire than all of Africa and South America combined to make room for food production. The way that we make food today requires all that land. If you eat a steak, it takes 2 years to make that steak, and that's the technology is a cow, of course, that turns the grains that it eats into the steak that you have on the plate, and it's super inefficient. And yes, we all love our steaks and all that, but if you just step back and think about the supply chain and the process and everything that's going into that, the fact that cow has a greenhouse gas footprint of a car and all the resources that it's using, can we do it better? And so the scientists at NASA, if you want to have do things differently, you have to think differently. And the scientists at NASA had to think differently when they were thinking about how to feed astronauts on long space journeys where you don't have massive farms and you can't take 2 years to make a steak. And they had this one idea about taking elements of the air, like what you have available to you, and using a process like fermentation to make food and nutrients, protein and beyond. And so that stopped. They stopped working on that in the 70s. And so when myself and my co-founder wanted to really be a part of this food system and helping to make it more sustainable and to go from feeding 8 billion people today to 10 billion people when we get there without breaking the planet, we saw that work from the 70s, took it off the shelf, and built this way of taking elements of the air and turning it into nutritious protein that can feed the nations. And really, we were really excited when we did our techno-economic assessment, which is another way of saying how much is this going to cost. And we found that we believe that when we scale this is going to be a way of getting low-cost nutrition, all the essential amino acids, rich in vitamins and minerals. How do you get that in the hands of the world? And you can grow this food anywhere, rain or shine, day or night, in any geography, so it can, landlocked places, all over the world can have access to making really nutritious food. So that's really what led me to where I am. And I have some great investors here, several in the audience. We have ADM there in the audience. Ronnie is somewhere, Ronnie Robinson. So a lot of people have invested in what we're doing. And so super excited about that. But I want to make another comment about the investment piece. We set aside, in the last investment round, we set aside a certain amount of money where we wanted to have a diverse group of investors and, made sure that we brought in investors that are focused on women, focused on underrepresented minorities, what have you. And we have our table of investors it represents the world. And we're really excited about that and excited that the leadership, our board, really supported that effort.
Dr. Dyson, I need to be a part of your family. Entrepreneurs, rocket scientists. I don't know how many people can say, yeah, I know a rocket scientist, no big deal. Like, you don't know one? That's awesome. Alicia, what about for you? Can you share a little bit of your origin story?
Could we just talk about how cool Air Protein is? It's so cool.
Yes, we totally can.
It's so cool. Okay. My origin story, I grew up in New York City. My parents wanted me to be a doctor, too. I went to university and I studied biopsych too, and I overloaded my courses so I could take a year abroad and do all theater and film and television stuff. And after that year, I had a cancer scare, and very similar to you, I was like, what do I want to do with my life? And I actually wrote my college essays about how psychoneurobiology and acting were really the same thing, that they both study humanity and behavior and why we are who we are. And I realized I wanted to be an actor and a storyteller because I wanted to evolve culture, and I felt like I could do that on a more global level as a storyteller than as a scientist, because I wasn't as cool as Lisa. But I do want to point something out, which is I kind of wanted to make my own work from a very early age, but there was this idea I had in my head that if girls make their own work, that's a vanity project, but if boys make their own work, that's just talent. Like, there's a story, there's a narrative, or there was when I was coming up as a creator, and it took me a little bit of time to sort of leap over that belief. And I think it's so important that we are always questioning our beliefs and questioning what society has taught us, that we're like, wait a minute, that's a lie in my head that I'm telling myself that's not necessarily true, right? So the reason I leapt over that belief was my father passed very suddenly, and he was a management consultant, and he always wanted to produce. And I then had this calling to produce. I actually had a calling to make a short film about grief and loss, and I collaborated with the cancer support community, and it's shown in cancer support communities all over the country now, and it went to festivals and all that stuff. But that was my first time producing, and I did it in honor of my father and in honor of changing culture about how we experience grief and loss. I think in this country, we have such fear of grief and loss. We have such fear. We're such an ageist society. One of my other favorite things about the Gina Davis Institute is we're starting to talk about that more, of like ageism in media. And so that was my first little movie. And then I made 2 more movies, and then I get to make things as an actor, as just an actor person, that I hope really helps evolve culture, like Orange, where we talk about incarceration, where we talk about, I think it was the first ever massive trans character that really, really, really helped change culture in an amazingly positive way.
We've got about 10 minutes left. Catherine, Dee Dee, we'll get to you, and then we'll maybe have time for 1 or 2 questions in the audience. Please share your origin story with us.
I do love this, the sharing stories, because it's through the stories that we see themes and trends that we can then proactively support with those coming behind us. So I'll just pull out a couple themes from my own story. So I did not set out to hold a role with Chief in front of the title. My aspiration was actually to be a stay-at-home mom, so I have failed by like a big margin. And I think there's some pieces around just my mom was a school teacher, like what I saw in my household, my grandmother's nurses, et cetera, very traditional female roles as one. And so one of the themes in my career is when people, and it was men most of the time, tapped me on the shoulder or over the head with a frying pan, opened my eyes to see some strength or gift that I didn't see. And maybe I didn't see it because I wasn't reflective enough. Maybe I didn't see it because it wasn't in my line of sight of my sphere, my household, my bubble. But the first was I was an art history major, and I worked for a nonprofit, and then I went to business school. And I got an incredible job offer from a Fortune 100. And the chief HR officer giving me the job offer after I busted my bum through this business degree said, "You know nothing. I will teach you everything, but what I see in you is," and he named 3 very specific leadership gifts. And he said, "These will take you far, and I will teach you the rest." But again, had someone not in that position of power, I never would have even known that that was in scope for me. So fast forward through some amazing experiences and some development. Another trend would be I now am the proud mom of an 11-year-old and 8-year-old. And so there is just a reality of hurdles that we see and research are faced and felt by women in a different way than men, in terms of that moment when you go back to work after maternity leave, that moment 4 or 5 months in off of maternity leave when you haven't slept and you're not operating at 100% because you're the one feeding the baby in the middle of the night. There's an emotional toll, right? There's a lot of different, no matter how involved your partner is. Having baby number 2, an international move. I mean, there are a lot of toll gates in time where I've paused and had a thought about what I should do with my career, where my incredible husband has not had that experience. And what has moved me through a continued very fulfilling, and I'm so grateful, career is that I had great leaders who were connecting the work that I was doing, sometimes not very sexy at all, to the purpose of the company, who were connecting my development to places that I was passionate and I felt like I was being stretched and I was growing, and that was what good looked like for me. And I think these two pieces are certainly the thread of my story of where I sit today in a company with a purpose I'm so proud to support, and a leadership team that I feel very challenged and encouraged by, and in work that I'm really proud to go home and share with my kids to say, I don't do this in sacrifice of not being a stay-at-home mom with you. I do this in support of showing you a life where you can live and lead and deliver and tap into your gifts and also have a very full and integrated personal world. But I think it's important when we think about supporting women, these themes. You hear time and time again, someone tapped me on the shoulder. I didn't see it, but they did. And time again, how do we help people get through these very typical hurdles where we see women lean out of the workforce, which is why we're working so hard to do the work for representation in the senior leadership ranks.
Dee Dee?
Hello. A couple of things that the ladies said today that struck me. Firstly, is the term purpose that, what the ladies have repeated over and over. One of the reasons that I named my company Purpose Toys is because it was the first time really in my life and in my career where my sensibility, my resources, but also my desire to give all came together, right? Hence Purpose Toys. You talked about being a stay-at-home mom. Before Purpose Toys, I was in the music industry for 15 years and spent a few years in fashion and spent 11 years at home raising my son, who's in the audience. He's now 13. And in 2020, Purpose really, came into my life in a big way. And through that purpose, I felt like I needed to tell a story. I felt like I needed to share what my incredible grandparents shared with me, which was resources, tons of resources. I felt like I needed to share the inspiration my incredible mother left me with. I have a doll that's like made in her likeness and bears her name. Oh God, don't say that, I'll start crying. But I wanted to share so much of what was given to me with children. I have one child who's, again, now 13 and barely returns my text messages and ignores my TikToks. But, through Purpose Toys, it's my way of mothering children around the world and sharing resources and sharing uplifting stories and just, hopefully in my own little introverted way, reminding them that they're incredible and that they're very much the main character and that we love them.
Carla, did you want to share any more from your origin story?
No, but I'm just so inspired by this group of women, and I love that it came together with the word purpose, because I think that is something that I see in each one of our stories, but also in the stories of every powerful woman has a real deep sense of purpose and intention, and they want their intention to translate into real impact. So thank you for having us here. This is extraordinary.
Yes, absolutely. I think we've got time for maybe 1 or 2 questions. Anybody in the audience? Just right there.
Thank you so much for that.
Yes.
It was inspirational. It was insightful to hear what you all had to say. As women, I'm sure you'll agree that we carry a very heavy load. The mental load, the physical load, and also an emotional load. You talked about highs and lows. This is for any of you to answer that would like to. But how do you deal in those moments of low with that load that you're carrying, that you keep on this path because you guys are just, plowing forwards? What's the secret?
Purpose. That's a great question.
I would, first of all, thank you for asking that question. and watch Ramona at midlife, because that's what it's really all about. The movie that just premiered here. And for me, the first answer, particularly surrounded by these extraordinary women, is the women in my life. Like, that's the truth. I have different friends that I call for different things. Like, I have the work question friend, and I have the I feel fat friend, and I have the like mom friend, and I have the I want to kill my husband friend, and there's like different it's a tribe, you know. And I will also say, because I think it's really important to say this, I was a total loner. I was so shy growing up. I did not find my tribe and sort of collect these humans till later in life. Carla and I were talking about that at like 1 o'clock in the morning last night. And if you don't find your tribe early, that is so okay. Like, you can keep looking and find your tribe.
Absolutely. I mean, I have on my phone, if it's in my pocket, one of my groups, it's literally called the Kitchen Cabinet. And it's a group of women, including my best friend, who has been my best friend since college. And it's intergenerational. It's women that had been our mentors that are now, we are friends. And so, you know, I said my father passed away, my mother passed away, and then my first year of business school, my sister passed away. And so that 5-year period, when you talk about lows, it's like, how do you come back from that? How do you not just stop? You need the people around you that will literally physically pick you back up when that happens. And she, my best friend, is one of those. And you keep those people in your life and you go on the journey together, because you can't do it alone. Like, otherwise, this world can be unbearable if you try to do it alone, but there's people out there that see the thing about you that makes you special that won't let you quit. So when you find them, stay in their lives, and you'll find that you go into amazing places. She's now one of the top people, very senior at Goldman Sachs, which is, I left like 5 years in, but like, you see people go and do amazing things, but you can do it together. But if you have those few, you don't need a ton, you just need a few.
Agree 1,000% with that. People in our lives are super important. And one thing I'll add when you're alone is focusing on gratitude. Just carving out a little bit of time, 5 minutes of your day, and just think about all the things you're grateful for. Even through the tears, what can you find something you're grateful for? Even like when my dad passed, I can think about all the happy moments and be grateful that I had the opportunity to have someone like him in my life, et cetera. So it's something that, and I even do that now with my husband. We have 7 minutes. We do 7 minutes a day of gratitude. And it's not only is it a moment to reflect on all the goodness in our lives that we may not see because of some of the burden, the things that weigh us down, but it's also good to actually hear, because oftentimes he'll tell me things that he's grateful for about me, or that I will for him as well. So that's another way of getting your network to also help lift you up.
I think, what we see in research is that women will fill in space in their head and create a narrative in a way that men don't as often or as much. And so that leads to lows, meaning there is a disconnect in my head of what I think my boss wants versus what I'm doing, and I spend a lot of time in that space, or my partner, or my kids. And so one great antidote to that is having conversations with those stakeholders to clarify what actually matters most to them, so that we don't spend so much time like doing the heavy mental load, emotional load of where we're falling short, which is such a classic female, narrative path to go down. My husband literally said to me, "What is this, BCG?" Because he walked into our dining room and I had my, at the time then, 3-year-old and 5-year-old with an index card sort. So it was Girl Scouts, soccer team, room mom. And I asked my 3-year-old, "Can you put in order which one of these things is most important for you, for mommy to be at, for the role for mommy to play?" That, do you know what? That girl slid up to the top something that was like 30 minutes a month, right? And I'm killing myself as the room mom, the weekly soccer coach. I'm hand making all the cupcakes but it was such a great experience of, oh my gosh, I am creating lows for myself. I'm putting so much burden on my shoulders because I just haven't done a proper conversation to understand what matters most to this stakeholder in my life, and then how much energy I'm going to deploy against that. Because at the end, it was more about purpose. Like, my purpose is for those children to feel my love. My version of how I thought they needed to feel it, and their version, there was a gap. and it was creating stress and emotional distraction in my life that wasn't doing anything good or positive.
Okay, V is giving me the rap cue, but Carla, I know you wanted to add really quick.
First of all, I'm doing the index card thing because I'm definitely making a lot of cupcakes in my life, and maybe I don't need to. I'd like to stop making cupcakes. The only thing that I will say is I have deep in my heart an understanding that all of us will be faced with a reason to throw in the towel. Some of us will have 100 reasons, some of us will, but we will all be faced with a reason to throw in the towel. But if we are meant to and intend to, and it's within our purpose to live the wildest dreams of our ancestors, then we dust ourselves off and play the long game and know this too will pass, things will get better, got to get those index cards and reprioritize. But I think that that's what keeps me moving forward. That, yeah, this sucked, today sucked, and this month might suck, and this year might suck. A lot of us are in there, but we have a reason to keep going.
Thank you so much. An amazing panel of dynamic women. Round of applause. That's the end of our panel. Thank you so much for coming today. Don't forget to enjoy the rest of the festival.
Thank you.